It's Sunday night, it's 9:30 and the Teddy Bears are back in business. Welcome along to the 49th edition of the Gersnet Podcast, the totally free and independent Rangers show made by the fans for the fans. Tonight on the show, we're going to be looking back at Tuesday's emphatic win over on the Rock and this afternoon's Masterclass versus Marseille. We're also taking a wee look at the transfers, the squads, the tactics and all the rest of it, and how delighted are we that the football's finally back. Joining us this evening on the show, we have the returning Christine Somerville. Christine, how did you enjoy your day at Ibrox today?
Well, considering the last time I watched Marseille at Ibrox, the rain was absolutely... it was really one of the heaviest downpours I can remember. So today was a nice change from that, certainly. But no, I thoroughly enjoyed it. And it's great to see so many different players getting a wee chance to show what they can do.
Oh, it was great. The only thing it was raining today was raining goals. It was a good day. It was a wonderful performance, and we'll come on to it later and cover who played well and who really stood out. Also with us this evening is the resident sound guru, Graham Gallagher. Graham, how's your summer been?
Well, summer's been pretty good. Now that the football started, I can really enjoy it.
Aye, how have you been whiling away the days? Cricket World Cup?
Oh, no.
No, fair enough. Right now, as always, we are live this evening on the Gersnet Podcast. We've enabled the comments on the YouTube stream, so I'll be keeping my eye on that throughout the show. Please do get in touch. Let us know what you think. We'll try and get through as many of that as possible. Also, please do forgive us if any rude little words pop out or if we make any silly mistakes. We are live. We're unfiltered. Please join in, get involved with the show. Right. If you've never listened to the Gersnet Podcast before, you're very welcome along to the start of the new season. This is our third season doing the show. If it's your first time listening, I hope you enjoy the show. You can always like and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. We're available on iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, all the rest of it, Acast, everywhere you get your podcast from. Please do like and subscribe and you will never miss a thing from us. Also, please do make sure you head back and check out last week's show when Colin was in the hot seat, bringing you a really interesting discussion celebrating the 30th anniversary of the Maurice Johnson signing and looking at the implications that had for Rangers, for Celtic, for Scottish football, how it was treated by the media. It's a really fascinating show, even for me. I wasn't even born at the time, but it's a really, really good show and I'd recommend you head over and check that out. Right, I think I've babbled on long enough. It's time to crack on with the show. The natural place to start is with the return of the football as proper this week. Obviously, we headed over to Gibraltar on Tuesday to take in the match against St. Joseph's. Graham, first of all, how did you see this match? What did you think of the performance out there in Gibraltar?
Well, it was a game of two halves, to coin a phrase. First half, I felt we were a bit nervy. We were a bit over deliberate on the ball. The second half again was a marked difference. We were a bit more open. We moved the ball a lot quicker. But then when I was watching the game, I thought, well, maybe these conditions have got something to do with it because it was very hot, and also when you watch the ball, you had to lift the ball off the surface in order to make it move. But it was catching up on the surface a lot. So the second half for me was a vast improvement on the first.
It's a weird pitch. It was strange conditions, I think, because of the heat, but also I believe there's quite a swirling wind. Obviously, the pitch is far from ideal, and whilst we have practice on those pitches from last season in the top flight in Scotland, it's not an ideal place to play football. When you add in the fact that you then got jumbo jets taking off in the background, it's a slightly surreal experience. Christine, do you think that we can, at this stage of the season, afford the players a wee bit of a slower start in that first half?
I think it was kind of inevitable. I mean, it's our first competitive game. As Graham said, the weather, the pitch, we probably couldn't expect an awful lot. But the first half was a disappointment. There's no doubt about that. But once I think we got the first goal, then it just seemed to change and it flowed. And I don't think we were ever in any danger really of losing a goal. But it was good to just see the goals coming in and obviously to get a clean sheet.
It was the first chance, Christine, for us to see a lot of the new signings in a competitive atmosphere. Did any of the new boys really stand out to you? Who do you think we can look forward to seeing this year?
I like the look of Aribo. I like the look of what's his name? Ojo. Funnily enough, my sister knows a Fulham season ticket holder, and she was asking him about Ojo, and he was saying that he's got all the skills required, but he's not got a great football brain. So make of that what you will. But I like the look of all the players actually that we've signed. I think they've done quite well. There's none that you could say, well, that was a waste of money.
No, I think you're right. I mean, obviously, as we've got a comment here on the YouTube saying that the game kind of turned into a training session, and it was. I don't think that's an unfair point. I think, we're still getting up to speed, and the conditions were strange, and by the time, obviously, we sized up the measure of the opposition quite quickly and fell into a rhythm. But I think it was a really good chance to see the new boys, see how they bed in, and kind of see the shape of things, and try and sense how Gerrard is gonna shape up in the season to come. Graham, an interesting discussion point maybe could be that obviously we've brought Shea Ojo in as a wide player from Liverpool, and by all accounts in the friendlies and again on Tuesday against St Joseph's, he was really commanding in a really imperious performance. How would this measure up with you if we then fail to get Ryan Kent? Do you think we've got a suitable replacement in Ojo, or do you think it's worth still kind of trying to break the budget and bring in Kent, either probably on loan, but potentially permanently as well?
Oh, that's a difficult question to answer. Ojo isn't a direct replacement for Ryan Kent, although judging by the stuff that he's been doing, he's been mostly on the right-hand side, but he's been given license to move across the wings. And he's been swapping that position with Jordan Jones, who I think he's been, Jordan's been trying, and some of his stuff has been quite nice. Other stuff hasn't quite come off, and he lacks a little bit of pace, from what I can see. In the St Joseph's match, there was a few occasions where he could have gone by his man, and he didn't. But maybe that wasn't what his intention was. Maybe his intention was to sell the dummy and come inside. I don't know. But no, Ojo's not a replacement for Ryan Kent. Whether or not Jurgen Klopp thinks it's a good idea to keep a hold of Ryan Kent and allow him to come back to us for another year for his development or not is entirely up to Jurgen Klopp. But I think what we've got at the moment is pretty decent. But especially with Jamie Murphy coming back in today, I'm not quite sure. I'm not sure whether we really need him, and how Borna Barisic played alongside Ryan Kent at times was a bit lacking. Whereas when he's playing along with Jordan Jones, he seems to fit into the shape of the squad and the shape of the team on the park a lot better. So it's all ifs and buts. I don't know.
It's a tough one. Just to kind of segue away, you mentioned Borna Barisic there, and I have a feeling that Borna Barisic is going to be the real conundrum over the next 6 or 7 weeks, because I was very, very critical of Barisic consistently throughout last season. I thought he wasn't good enough, considering the reported outlay that we spent on him. The reputation that he had in Croatia wasn't coming across in his performances in Scotland, and I was really confident that we would probably try and shift him on this summer. By all accounts, his pre-season has been exceptional. He's come back with a different attitude. He's come back in fantastic physical condition, apparently. And it's probably given the management team a headache as to what to do with Barisic. Graham, where do you come down on this? Do you think that we can almost is it taking a gamble if we stick with Barisic through at least until January, or do you think that we should really be looking to reinforce at left back before the window shuts?
Well, John Flanagan's out at the moment because he's injured, and Andy Halliday came on today. I don't know if Andy Halliday is the solution to the Barisic issue going forward, but he's certainly handy as a backup player. I think that position is what John Flanagan's there for. I don't see Steven Gerrard going into the market to buy a left back. or even get one on loan for that matter. No, I think he's going to stick with Barisic. I don't think he's going to. I don't think he's going to. I think that a lot of the Rangers fans have judged Barisic on a season where A, he was settling in, and B, he had a number of injuries, and possibly was rushed back through injury, and so he never really settled. But there's definitely a player there, and today he was maybe about half a yard short on his tackle, but other than that, he was excellent.
Christine, what do you reckon? Am I being a wee bit harsh on Borna Barisic?
I don't think you've been harsh, Ross, but I do agree with Graham. I agree that last season he was a disappointment because we all saw him against us in Europe. We thought, oh, we're getting a player here. And then it didn't really work out for him for perhaps a variety of reasons. You know, he's still not he's still a fairly young guy away from home. So you just don't know, what's going through people's minds and what's affecting them. But I do like him, and I would like to see him given the chance. And on Ryan Kent, I have to be honest, I'm not really bothered whether he comes back or not. I certainly wouldn't like us to have a huge outlay on paying a fee for him. Because I think he's still a work in progress. I think he did well, particularly against Celtic, which is probably why a lot of people are wanting him back. But over the season, I'm not quite convinced about Ryan Kent. So whether he comes back or not is irrelevant to me. I think Jordan Jones could fill that role quite well.
I mean, it's kind of been the story that's dominated our closed season so far is the will he, won't he around Ryan Kent. And I don't see him stepping into the Liverpool first team this season. And I think if I was a Liverpool fan, I would be thinking we should just cash in, get a few million quid for this boy and move on. Obviously, it's unlikely that we'll be stumping up the fee to prize him away from Liverpool permanently. So I don't know. I don't know if I can quite see him coming back up. But by all accounts, he's desperate to come back up the road. But whether an agreement can be met between the two clubs, I don't know. Listen, if we switch back over to the St Joseph's game for a moment, Christine, being realistic here, this is game over, right? 4 away goals, them coming over to Ibrox. This should be bread and butter stuff. How do you approach the second leg in these occasions? Do you try and rotate in some of the youngsters, obviously given the limitations of the Europa League squad, or do you kind of go hell for leather and try and put as many past them as possible while we get fitness up and get a bit of confidence in the team?
I think maybe a wee mixture, to be honest, Ross. I think maybe try a couple of the promising kids, but still have the basis of the first team players there, because it only takes a couple of stupid things to happen and we're suddenly maybe a goal down, and then the crowd begin to get anxious. Although with 4-0, it is over. But I would not go too much with the youngsters, but maybe just get some of them into the team and get them a wee bit of European experience. The other thing is we've got a lot of our new players that don't have that European experience. So perhaps, experience a European night at Ibrox. Although it's not the usual European nights because it'll still be light. Probably won't sell out, especially at 4-0. But just get them the experience of playing.
Graham, how about yourself? What do you hope to see from us on Thursday night?
I hope to see the same spirit and endeavour that Stevie Gerrard espouses, to be honest with you, and he just wants to smash them. So, yeah, that's what I want to see. I want to see Rangers smash them another 4-0. No stepping off the gas, just keep going. Score as many goals as you can and send a message to anybody that's watching.
Fair point. I mean, especially considering the fact that we don't have much of a barometer of Scottish football against Gibraltar football, but we've already surpassed the marker that was laid down 2 or 3 years ago by the other side in the Champions League. So I think I agree with you, Graham. Like, it's still training essentially. Obviously, it's competitive, and obviously there's something at stake. But we can approach this second tie with with a certain mindset whereby this should be comfortable, but it should be now about not letting that comfort set into your mentality, pushing on, and getting the minutes in the legs and getting your confidence up. Because you're right, we have to send a marker. The likelihood is that we're playing Progress Niederkorn in the next round, right? They put 2 past Cork City over in Ireland in the week. So the likelihood is that we're playing Niederkorn. We need to show them that we're a different proposition to what we were 2 seasons ago. Obviously, given the history between Rangers and Niederkorn, or the potential circumstances, let's say, around Rangers travelling to Ireland, Graham, are you pleased that it looks like it'll be Niederkorn, or would you rather that we were heading over to Cork?
It makes absolutely no difference to me who we play, because if you're going to win a tournament or you're going to enter a tournament, you have to beat everyone. So it doesn't make any difference to me. Sorry to be short, but that's the way I feel about it.
Oh, fair point. There's me scrabbling around for another question. Christine, how about yourself? Would you rather have had Cork City, or would you like a wee trip over to Luxembourg?
Well, I won't be going to either of them, so I think I'm a wee bit like Graham. Doesn't really matter to me. I think if you're Rangers security people, they probably would prefer Luxembourg, to be honest.
I don't think there's any question about that. Graham, we've had an interesting question here on the YouTube stream. Someone suggesting that we should have gone out and bought Lawrence Shankland. Obviously, he did the business consistently for Ayr United. He's now stepped over to Dundee United for yet another season in the Championship. I see that he scored the other night against Hearts. Do you think that Shankland, considering that we've got Defoe up top, Morelos, no one quite knows what's going to be the situation in a couple of weeks with Morelos, and Greg Stewart as well, who can play up through the middle. Do you think that Lawrence Shankland would have been an acquisition that we could do just for cover and to fill a spot in the squad?
For a striker's position?
Aye, that's what I would see him playing.
No. He did okay, or he did better than okay at Ayr United. And then he's made that move to Dundee United. I think Dundee United have got aspirations to return to the Premier League as soon as possible with their new American owner. But no, I don't see him. I mean, no, just no.
Just not.
Just no.
Ah, fair play. Right, I think what we'll do is we'll leave the Europa League chat there. Obviously, we'll be in hopefully a stronger position next week, and Colin will be taking you through the performance that we'll go through on Thursday. By that point, we'll know who we're facing. Presumably, it'll be Niederkorn. I know that there's still, for anyone listening who's not quite aware, there's potential of a Luxembourgish team dropping down from the Champions League. So yet again, the dates are all up in the air about when we'll actually be heading over to Luxembourg. I spent a year living there, so if anyone needs any hotel recommendations, get in touch. What we'll do is we'll move on to the Marseille game today and take a wee look back at that and discuss the position that the squad's in, obviously with that game in Oxford last weekend. Graham, what did you make of the game today at Ibrox?
What did I make of the game of the day? I thought we were an easy street, to be absolutely honest with you. I don't think Marseille offered very much. Not even Dimitri Payet. Dimitri Payet, it didn't matter whether he played on the left-hand side of the wing or whether he came inside. Our midfield was all over that. And he never really got a sniff of the ball. There was one occasion where he got a shot off, which sailed past Al McGregor's left-hand post, which was probably the closest he got to the goals all day. His deliveries were excellent from corners. But other than that, we basically bossed that game today from start to finish with a number of changes. And, I thought Joe Aribo had a smashing game. I thought his movement in tight positions inside the midfield was excellent, and his forward movement was excellent. I thought our centre of defence and Edmondson was excellent as well. His distribution was fantastic. His range of passing, able to find people on either wing from such a young guy as well. I thought that was excellent, and our forward movement was excellent. Danny Candeias was on fire in the first half. He just kept breaking through those lines, and then when Danny got his second goal, it had been telegraphed beforehand, because Ryan Jack had made the same pass only to Joe Aribo, who was in a similar position but just inside the box, and that pass wasn't completed, unfortunately. However, the next time he did it, he got Daniel Candeias on the run, and Daniel brought it down and just slotted it home perfectly. So yeah, and even the second half we made a number of changes and we dominated that as well. They looked a bit more lively in the last 10 minutes after they'd made about 8 changes, but they didn't really pose much of a threat for us, to be honest with you.
No, and this is the team that came in 5th in the French top tier last season, right? So this is a strong caliber of European opposition, and we made them look amateur. There's no bias about that. We made them look absolutely rotten. Christine, why is that? Could you say that we are maybe a couple of weeks ahead in the pre-season schedule and that our fitness is better? Or are we looking at what is potentially a very, very strong Rangers side?
Well, I'll be quite honest with you. I'm going back to Gaz's first season. If you remember, there was a tournament at Ibrox and Steaua Bucharest were playing us. And I think we beat them some like 4-0. And it was like, oh my God, we're going to win the Champions League. And then we actually met them in the competition later on and they knocked us out. So I never really tried to judge the season on pre-season friendlies or, how we're going to perform, because it's just never really the same. Marseille didn't impress me at all, but they may just see it as a run around, just getting fitness back. So it's difficult to say. I wouldn't like.
I agree with that as well, Christine. Yeah, you're right.
I wouldn't make any kind of predictions for the season, certainly based on performances and friendlies. Because
no, listen, I take the point, but surely an unfit and a poor Marseille team is better than a fit and 100% St Mirren team, right? The point I'm trying to make is that surely the caliber of player that we came up against today, with your Duja Coletta Carr playing at the back for them, obviously Dimitri Payet, they've got some. Obviously, Florian Thauvin went off quite early on, went off injured after I think he rolled his ankle on the Astro off the side of the pitch there. But they've got a high caliber of good quality European players, and we made them look Sunday League. We made them look like juniors. So surely, an unfit and an untrained Marseille team with those players is going to be better than the caliber of opposition that we're going to be looking at. A St Johnstone or a Livingston or someone like that.
Well, you would think so, Ross, but it was really just a kick a bit, to be honest. And we happened to score 4 goals. And we looked pretty decent doing it. But then we have already got a competitive match under our belt before this league started for us. So that says a lot. That says a lot for Gerard's training regime in Portugal and the shape that he's got our players in, as opposed to where Marseille are and where they're likely to be.
I think as well, you talk about the Scottish teams, but there's no mad tackles or anything like that going in today from either team. Whereas what you get is when you start, playing league games in Scotland, there's just idiots going in for insane tackles. So I think it's difficult to really draw a comparison there. But no, I agree. Marseille have got some great players, and we made them look ordinary. But I still don't want to go overboard on our displays because it's a friendly and just not competitive.
I'm willing to go overboard. I thought we were exceptional. I thought the way we moved the ball was brilliant. I thought, by the way, Tavernier was different class yet again. And what an asset we have in that boy, considering the outlay we spent on him and the questions there have been over his defensive attributes. I thought he was absolutely wonderful. But I feel I've done quite well here. I've resisted. We've been going for about 25 minutes now and I've not mentioned Daniel Candeias. I am this boy's biggest fan. I think he's an exceptional football player. Christine, Daniel Candeias' poor performance this afternoon. What did you make of it?
I thought he was absolutely excellent. The wee lady actually that sits beside me, Rena, she was talking about him and saying, "Why doesn't Candeias get a game every, every game kind of thing?" And I said, "I don't know." So the next thing he was off at half time. But no, I'm a Candeias fan as well. I thought his second goal in particular was absolutely excellent.
Oh, it was lovely. It was lovely. The way
Wasn't it?
that control, you can't teach that touch.
No.
That's instinct. And do you know what saddens me is the sense that I get is that this management team doesn't rate him in the same way that obviously you and I do. Um, Graham, we made a point last season on the pod that maybe Daniel Candeias is the kind of player who you'll get a couple of excellent performances from, and then it'll dip a wee bit. There'll be inconsistency. Obviously, you can raise all the question marks around his delivery and his final ball and his output. But a point that we made last year was that sometimes he needs to be dropped, and if he sits out for 2 or 3 weeks, he then comes back into the team and he's rearing to go. Is it possible that with him being omitted from the Europa League squad for this first qualifying round, Gerrard's doing exactly that and knows he can get a reaction from him?
Yeah, it's possible. Yeah. However, I'd like to say that a game like today is perfect for Danny Candeias. His work rate is unquestionable. His work rate's excellent. Always has been. He always gives 100% as far as his work rate's concerned. But when it comes to breaking down teams that are sat with 10 men behind the ball, Danny's not the answer because he doesn't really have a trick and he can't really go by people. But if you're playing against a team who likes to play open football and who are attacking and not sitting behind the ball, then Danny's great for getting in behind them and just slotting the ball away. But if he's got 10 men like Kilmarnock, then it's a very difficult game for Danny to assert himself on. So that's basically the quality you're getting. That's the difference between a player at the price of Danny Candeias and somebody like Ojo, who's estimated to be a lot more than him.
And that's probably got something to do with the kind of footballing upbringing that someone like Danny Candeias will have had. The continental style, and you're not going to be faced with a team like Kilmarnock on an artificial surface. There's an interesting point being raised on the YouTube there, Christine, about the fact that Jake Hastie and Greg Stewart were not in the squad. I don't know if you've got any knowledge as to why that might be. Can you think of any reason why they would be left out?
I can't think of anything. I mean, it was one of the first things my sister and I were talking about is before the game that they're not even on the bench, and we had a couple of we had Barjonas and the other big tall centre half. What's his name? Help me out.
Which big tall centre half are you speaking of?
The one that came on right at the end.
Lewis Mayo.
The one that scored, Lewis. Sorry. And if you're listening, I'm very sorry about that.
Oh, he listens, I'm sure.
But he obviously wanted a couple of youngsters on the bench today. That other than that, I have no great thoughts and great knowledge of why neither of them were available. But maybe just to give the others a chance. It just shows you what riches we have there.
Maybe
the squad's got a lot of depth this year, to be honest, to be fair, Christine. And he's trying to find places for guys so he can get a good look at them in a sort of semi-competitive game. So, yeah, I would expect to see Greg Stewart and Jake Hastie appear on Tuesday. We're playing, isn't it? Tuesday's game. Yeah, I would expect to see them then.
Aye. Now listen, going from folk who weren't playing to someone that did manage to get a few minutes today is Jamie Murphy, and obviously the last 12 months for him have been, I'm sure, an absolute nightmare. And I'm sure I speak for the three of us when I say that it was an absolute joy to see him back on that football pitch after the injury that he had to go through. However, you could perhaps make an argument that Jamie Murphy was a good player for us 2 years ago, but maybe we've progressed and are slightly looking for a higher caliber of player. Obviously, he'll potentially be filling a void that will be left by the departure of Ryan Kent on the left wing. we all know what Jamie Murphy's going to do, and that he's going to pick up the ball on the left wing, he's going to run a certain mileage, then he's going to cut in on his right foot and try and get a shot away. Everyone knows that's going to happen. Graham, how much of a role do you think Jamie Murphy will play this season, considering how much the calibre of the squad has progressed and improved over the last season when he's been missing? Do you think that there's still a place for him?
Yeah, I think there's still a place for him, but I think Stevie Gerrard will be very selective about when he plays him. He might not play him on heavy surfaces, and he definitely won't play him in any of the plastic. That's for sure. He was a bit hesitant today, I noticed, and he like all cruciate ligament injuries, he lacks that initial burst of pace when he's come back. But he's still skillful, and then I noticed that he took quite a heavy knock in the first 5 minutes of the second half. First 5-10 minutes of the second half, he took quite a heavy knock, and he stayed down for a little bit. And I was thinking, oh, here we go. But no, he made it back up, and he contributed quite a lot defensively, although he didn't appear to do much offensively. So, yeah, if you use him sparingly, I think Jamie Murphy's still an option that you could use.
Let's say then, Graham, hypothetically, that a bid was to come in for Jamie Murphy before the window closes. Where do you sort of see his value? What would you be willing to part with Murphy for?
Depends where he's going. If he's going back down south, then you're talking the same sort of money that you would expect for a Windus or something, maybe. But if he's staying north, then no, that's considerably lower.
See, that's the question, isn't it? Is what's the value of these guys? Not just in terms of what do they add to the squads, but could we get better value for the financial outlay that we could perhaps get for them? And with Jamie Murphy, I like him as a player. I really, really do. I just wonder if he's what we need in the system that Gerrard's clearly trying to play. And we'll talk about tactics and shape and the rest of it in a moment. But it seems like
Jamie Murphy's qualities are not only is he fairly decent dribbling, he holds the ball really well, and we don't. Jermaine Defoe and the other forwards tend not to hold the ball up. Well, I've kind of noticed Jordan Jones is trying that aspect of his game and improving it. But that's what Jamie Murphy offers you. He can hold the ball there for supporting runners from the midfield. We don't really have that. I noticed that the OJ tends to hang on to the ball quite a lot, not really go anywhere with it, and inevitably, 5 times out of 10 he loses it. So I don't know. Maybe that's the sort of thing you're looking for.
It's a tough one. I don't see him being a starter every week by any stretch of the imagination, but I think there's still a place for him in that he can unpick defences. We saw that even last season when we played against Scoopy. I remember his goal was, the really good side of Jamie Murphy's game, and that he's clever, he can see the space, and he links up quite well with the other players. But I just wonder if he's quite at the same standard as everyone else in the squad now. Obviously, another year older, had a whole year out with the injury. You hope that doesn't play on his mind too much. But I still definitely think he has something to offer against tightly packed, doubling up, compact, stubborn, physical Scottish defences. Christine, before we move on from the Marseille game today, it was 45 minutes in goal for Wes Foderingham, and for me, there's a wee bit of a conundrum here. Obviously, we've got McGregor as probably the undisputed number one. We've got Firth as well. I believe young McCrory has gone back out on loan, so he won't be available to the first team squad. Is Wes Foderingham too good a goalkeeper to spend another season sitting on a bench?
I would think he probably is. I mean, he's really never let us down, Wes. He's always very consistent, and I feel slightly sorry for him. But I can't remember. I'm just trying to think what age Wes is, because Alan McGregor's 37, 38.
I think Wes is around about 27. I think he's got a good decade on McGregor.
So, but it depends on what his ambitions are. He might not be happy just sitting on the bench every week, as he would inevitably be doing. So if a bid came in for him and he wanted to go, then I think we would probably let him go. But I do rate him and I do like him, but he's not in the same class as Alan McGregor, in my opinion.
Well, then to follow on from that, let's say he does decide to spend another season on the bench, and there's, let's suppose that McGregor retires at the end of this coming season. Obviously, he's getting on in terms of age. I still think he's the best goalkeeper in the league by some way. But let's say, for argument's sake, that McGregor decides to retire at the end of the season and Fodringham's hanging about. Is Fodringham, we say he's perhaps too good to spend another season on the bench. Is he good enough to be the number one for Rangers for the next 5 or 6 years?
Well, I think that with a decent defence in front of him, he probably is. Yeah, I would be quite happy with that. And we're talking about, he's 37. Did anybody see Roger Federer today at 37?
That's a fair point.
What they go through. So, I would be reasonably happy, but we would need backup for him as well, and I suppose that would come with first.
Well, I don't know if I think Wes would be a great keeper for somebody else. Whether he's too good to sit on the bench at Rangers is a separate question. I mean, Wes is a great shot stopper, reaction saves, but he struggled with anything above his head. Although, in saying that, and his defence, he's really improved that aspect of his game. Maybe because he's had the likes of Alan McGregor. But if we're going to be talking about playing 60 games in a season, you need somebody of a similar quality to Wes Foderingham to bring off the bench for, I don't know, cup games or whatever. You need that. You need that depth for keepers. You can't just rely on a 36-year-old keeper.
No, that's fair. Do you think that Wes Foderingham has ever cost us points, Graham? I mean, we've got Andy on the YouTube comments there saying that Wes Foderingham is a lower division goalkeeper, which actually to me is a wee bit harsh, because I think he's been entirely consistent throughout his time at Rangers, and like you say, he's a good shot stopper. Do you think he's ever actually cost us points?
I don't know about costing us points, but it was certainly he didn't shower himself in glory trying to take down a hopeful speculative attempt by the likes of Anthony Stokes, did he?
No, fair point. But what I struggle with is that I don't think I can't see why he would be happy to stay as a number 2, considering the fact that I think he could very easily drop down back to England and play at a Leeds United or play at a Barnsley or a Charlton Athletic or something like that, probably on the same or even better money.
Well, that's a fair comment. It's about where Wes Foderingham sees himself in the grand scheme of things. Does he see himself as the first choice, a Leeds or a Barnsley or whatever, or does he see himself as the next Rangers goalkeeper?
So where do you come down on that? Is Wes Foderingham a Rangers goalkeeper for the next 5 or 6 years?
At the moment, he's not. No, but that doesn't mean to say the next season he won't be.
I mean, is he too old now to really improve his game? Is he not kind of reaching his peak?
I would say for a goalkeeper between 28 and 30, he'll be getting there, but he's still got about a year or two to go on that. So, yeah, maybe about a year or two. I don't know if McGregor, although goalkeepers tend to last in the game a lot longer than your outfield players. Probably because they don't have to, they don't have to sustain all that impact.
Right.
But it depends whether his hips and his shoulders are good. That's another issue as far as McGregor's concerned.
Yeah.
But it's entirely possible that McGregor could make way for him next season.
Well, then the other person that we've not spoken about is Jack Anick. Who again has shown himself not to be a poor goalkeeper by any stretch of the imagination. Obviously spent last season out on loan at a poor Scunthorpe team who ended up getting relegated down to League Two. What kind of future, Graham, do you see for Mr. Anik at the club?
That's the most difficult one. Because what I've seen of him, I thought he was a pretty decent keeper. Albeit he had some crap in front of him when he played. So I would think that he'd be either looking for a transfer or another loan.
Christine, how about you? Do you think there's any place for Anik in the squad going forward? Or do you think that obviously he's not making any appearances so far that I've seen? I doubt he'll be playing on Thursday against St Joseph's. Do you think that his days at Rangers are numbered and he'll be gone by the end of the window?
I think they probably are, Ross. But if Fodringham had to go, then who knows? It's just it's an unfortunate position, isn't it? Because there's only ever one person can have the jersey, and he's probably third in the pecking order, maybe even fourth. So I don't see his future being with us.
No, I think I agree with you, Christine. It's obviously he went out on loan, was the number one at Scunthorpe, played every game for them, I believe, in their league campaign, and I think it'll be difficult for him to now come back from that and not even see himself as a number two at a club. So I really think that by the end of the season, by the end of the transfer window, will be at least one goalkeeper lighter. If we sort of continue this chat and move away from the friendly and keep talking about the tactics and the shape and the squad as it stands at the moment, Christine, what have you made of the recruitment over the summer? Up until yesterday, there could be a comment that we've not spent big, but we have definitely reinforced in terms of numbers. If we take we'll talk about the signing of Philip Helander in a moment, but if we look at the recruitment that's gone on before that, we've brought in 7 permanent signings, I believe, for very minimal outlay. Is that the right business model at this time, or do you think that we needed to start spending cash, which obviously we've gone on to do with the big Swedish centre-half?
I don't think cash necessarily brings you quality. I mean, look at Glenn Kamara. To me, he's been an absolute revelation, and we only spent 50 grand on him. So it's just knowing the right players and where to get them. And I think we've done really well in the transfer market. And I don't want us to go out and spend money that we possibly don't have for the sake of it. Fair enough, if the right player comes along and it's going to cost 4 million and we can afford it, then okay. But not really just to appease fans that aren't happy because we're not spending millions and millions on players, because look where that got us in the past.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point, and obviously we still bear the scars of signings like Carlos Pena, who spent a fairly chunky outlay on and didn't really see any of that recuperated. If we address the kind of buffalo-shaped elephant in the room here and talk about Alfredo Morelos for a moment, Graham, obviously we don't know whether he's staying or going, and if he does go, we don't know what kind of fee we could get. There's a lot of people claiming that at the moment he's kind of touting himself around the English clubs. He's retweeting articles about him moving to Crystal Palace and what have you. If he does go, let's say for argument's sake he gets sold for £15 million, how much of that fee do you think needs to be reinvested into one striker signing in order to replace the goals that Morelos brings?
Well, I wouldn't place too much stock in what Alfredo Morelos is posting, because anytime his name's mentioned, he posts it. But as far as transferring, if he transfers to an English Premier League side, then you would expect something in the region of 12, 15 million, possibly higher. And you're talking about having to replace 30 goals. So you would cut your cloth accordingly. If you're looking for a player that can score 30 goals a season, you're probably talking in the upper part of 6-7 million. But I don't know whether there's any truth in that Alfredo Morelos wants to leave, or that he is going to leave, or that he's got transfer stuff lined up. Obviously, his agent's looking, and Palace have been linked with him. I don't know.
So let's say then that he does move on. Obviously, the name that we've had touted around is Kamara Roof coming up from Leeds. How much do you know about him, Graham? Do you think that he could replace what Morelos gives us?
I know absolutely nothing about Kamara Roof, other than he plays on the left. I watched the Leeds. What's the Championship qualifiers for Premier League? I watched that, and I don't even know if he was playing. That's how much I know about him.
Superb. Christine, how about yourself? Do you know anything of Kamara Roof, and what do you think he can bring?
I'm just laughing here because I'm saying, please, Ross, please don't ask me what I know about him, because it's the square root of F all, really. I'd never heard of him. I tend not to watch any football, really, that Rangers aren't in. I'm not a great fan of watching sort of just a game for the sake of watching it. There's some that I'll watch, but I don't really. I like to be supporting a team, so if it's just a neutral thing, I tend not to watch it too much. So I know absolutely nothing of the guy, but I'll trust the scouting system and the manager. If they have looked at him and think he's Rangers class, for want of a better word, then yeah.
Fair enough. Do you think then that there is anywhere that we do need to recruit more heavily in at the moment, or do you think that the squad's in pretty good nick?
I can't think. I mean, possibly. As things stand, I would say probably not, but we don't know if we're going to lose any players. I think with the right back situation, if Tav had to go, for instance, and I hope he doesn't, but if he had to go, we're probably lacking a wee bit over that side. I think Flanagan can play there, can't he? But I'm not sure he's the answer.
We've still got a few surplus players that have to go in the background. Your Lafferty and your Dudu and stuff. So, there's definitely going to be players, or going to have to be players, leaving, because the squad is just, it's too big at the moment with those passengers. But talking about James Tavernier or Alfredo Morelos leaving at the moment, there's 27 days in the English market still to go. So I think it's a bit premature right at this moment. Maybe towards the start of the season, you might see some talk or some real action as far as that's concerned. And I'm not one for speculating, to be absolutely honest.
No, it's a fair point. But I mean, obviously, we had Gerrard coming out in the media the other day there saying that if anyone does want Morelos, they need to come early. And I totally respect that, because this guy has been a talisman for us for 2 seasons now. He's been our top goal scorer, and that's really, really difficult to replace. And we're going to need time. Obviously, it looks like we've got our preferred options sorted, but it takes time to get these things over the line, as we all know. Colin, do you think that obviously we brought in the centre half position, we lost Joe Worrell and we lost Gareth McCauley. We've now brought in George Edmondson and big Philip Helander, who's, I think I'm right in saying, is our most expensive signing since Nikita Jelavic signed. Do you think that we could perhaps be looking at a new shape in the campaign to come? Obviously, there's a wee bit of talk online about looking at a 3-5-2 formation with 3 centre halves. You can get Tav and Barisic in a more advanced role. Do you think? I seem to remember that Gerrard tried that last season, perhaps against Motherwell, but do you think maybe now we're a wee bit better equipped to go and be a bit more adventurous with this?
Who's that question to?
That's to you, big man.
All right. 3-5-2 is a difficult shape to perfect, especially if you're playing up against one striker. The difference with having the 2 centre backs is that they've got a clear line of sight to each other, and that they can always see where the line is. But with 3, you have to have at least 2 of the centre backs who are comfortable carrying the ball forward. And I don't see Connor Golson as being the player that can carry the ball forward. Although I would imagine that that Katic can certainly do it, and from what I've seen of Edmondson, I think he could do it, and he's a nice passer. So it's possible that he could use that. I think Stevie Gerrard spoke about the possibility of playing 3 at the back as well in today's interview after the game, his post-match reaction. So yeah, it's entirely possible, but it's not an easy formation to pull off and be good at. You have to be you can't just chop and change it.
Christine, Graham mentioned a couple of moments ago that we've got a lot of passengers in the squad at the moment, and the squad perhaps is a wee bit bloated and needs to be trimmed down before we can push ahead this season. One area to me that seems to be particularly true is in midfield, and we've got a huge number of midfield players. If we're looking at the likes of Ryan Jack, Greg Docherty, Joe Aribo, Glenn Kamara, Steve Davis, and then you move into the wider positions, your Shea Ojo's, your Jordan Jones, Jamie Murphy, Daniel Candeias, Jake Hasty, Greg Stewart obviously can play wide as well. Do you think that we're perhaps overstocked in these positions, and is Gerrard going to have a hard time picking his strongest 11?
I think without doubt he will, because, well, you've just named them all. And how do you kind of permutate a formation with people are going to be left out and disappointed. But I suppose if you were the manager, it's good to have different options. It's good to have different options, like to play to get the back with 3, solid defenders that you can depend on. I don't think we've had that before. But yeah, I think we are sort of overly abundant with midfielders, really. I don't know, out of all the ones you mentioned there, who would move on, because they're all fairly new signings, apart from Jamie Murphy.
Well, I mean, I think there's possibly a question mark over Greg Docherty this season. Obviously, he went and had by all accounts, an excellent time down at Shrewsbury. But with the reinforcements that have been made, obviously we're looking. I see that Jordan Rossiter's headed out to Fleetwood, obviously, so we've moved something out the door there. But I mean, how does Greg Docherty, who's already been loaned out by this manager once, how does he force his way into this side?
Well, he obviously got an opportunity today to show what he could do, and I thought he'd quite a good game. In terms of forcing your way in, that's really difficult, because the manager's going to have his favourites. I'm not sure whether Greg Docherty will be one of them. I like him. I like Greg Docherty, and he loves being a Rangers player. But I'm just not sure he's going to be a regular at all. But a good option to have to bring in.
Again, Ross, if you're planning on playing 60 matches in a season, you need that kind of depth. And taking Doc for an example, last season he went on loan, and it's done him the world of good. Ross McCrory's also gone on loan. He's gone to Pompey, hasn't he? So I'm hoping that does him the world of good also. But Doc has come back, and he's been excellent when he's been in the team. He hasn't put a foot wrong as far as I can see. So, yeah, I think he'll be used this season. Might not be used in what you would consider the first team, but he'll definitely be used.
And Graham, just before we finish, how much of our success this season depends on keeping hold of James Tavernier?
James Tavernier's deliveries are second to none. He was up there last season for assists and goals with the likes of, in the top 10, as a matter of fact, in Europe, with the likes of Messi and Ronaldo. But the Scottish game doesn't rate him, apparently, which I find absolutely bizarre.
So why, is that something to do with the fact that the Scottish game's not progressed in the same way as European football has, or is that more about the commentators making those comments?
I think it's got to do with general perception of Scottish football that it's garbage. It isn't necessarily garbage, but it is more physical and rough and tumble. And finesse players like Tavernier, are, especially when they're not flashy, tend to go under the radar. And the journalists and opposition managers and commentators don't want to talk about him, because if they highlight him, then they concede that he's a great player. So you don't want to draw attention to your opposition's strong points, not unless you're organising a defence against them. But anyway, I think Gerrard's more geared towards bringing through, to quote the great Vincent Laguardia Gambini, the youths.
That's fantastic. I love that. Right. Listen, I think that's probably all that we've got time for this evening, as I'm stumped by yet another one of Graham's old-fashioned quotes there. As always, the time's absolutely flown by. If you've enjoyed the show, thank you very, very much for joining us. If you've enjoyed it, please do make sure that you like and subscribe wherever it is that you get your podcasts from. Like I said at the top of the show, we're available on YouTube live and every Sunday evening. And then from tomorrow, from Monday, we're available for download on iTunes, Acast, Google Play, Spotify, the whole load. So please do make sure you like, subscribe, leave us a wee comment, let us know what you think. Obviously, we're always trying to reach new audiences and make the content better. Also, please make sure you head over to the website, www.gersnet.co.uk. Check out all the great content on there. The match previews will be back. Lots of really fascinating articles. And like I say, Colin did a wonderful job last week with the Maurice Johnson special. Make sure you check it out. Let us know what you think on all the channels. There's also a really friendly discussion forum over there. So if you're not a member, get signed up and let us know your thoughts. We'll be back next week with Colin in the hot seat, hopefully looking ahead to the second qualifying rounds of the Europa League, presumably against Progress Niederkorn, where we can hopefully put some demons to rest. Until then, my name's Ross Bennett. Thank you very, very much for joining us. Thanks again to Christine and to Graham, and have a great week.